Hi, how's everyone? I just woke up like 15 minutes ago because I took a nap. And I'm at my school's campus parking lot at the moment. And I just got back from a 15-minute class. So now I'm here to record and to discuss and to discourse with y'all. And I got my EOS because I don't wear makeup to school. I used to, but I'm lazy now and I just wake up, wash my face, or I try to wash my face as much as possible with Noxzema that I got like 2 weeks ago. But I didn't do it today. But let's get started with Autism Speaks and why the organization is a bad organization. Today is April 3rd. This is Autism Awareness Month. In April, people do this thing where they light it up blue. Blue is a color of autism awareness. When it comes to Autism Speaks, the organization that claims to be for autistic persons, but many autistics, including I myself, have explained why Autism Speaks is a terrible organization for those with autism. As someone who formerly supported the organization and looked to it as an organization that actually brought awareness to people like myself, I didn't unfollow the organization until literally last year, maybe not even a year ago, maybe about 8 months or so. I finally had to unfollow them because so much information was about that organization that just did not look good. It did not look good for me to support it, to support an organization that promotes eugenics, that promotes this ideal that autism is a disease and you have to get rid of it, instead of trying to help people who have autism cope through it, or having lists of how parents, particularly mothers, should avoid having autistic children, as if autistic children or any child with a disease or disorder is just something not worth having, instead of teaching neurotypical parents how to be decent parents to those with autism, so you don't have asshole parents that tell their child that they are a burden or that they are too expensive or too hard because they are disabled. A lot of people find disabled children a burden, and this organization does not help it at all. So many campuses, schools, sororities, fraternities have picked up Autism Speaks as their philanthropy because they believe that they are helping a cause that's not actually being helped. They believe that Autism Speaks is an organization that defends and speaks for autism, and a lot of people don't know much about autism and they want to learn more because they have friends with autism, or they are working with children children, they are working with autistic children, or they have a child or niece, nephew that may have autism and they want to learn more about it, or they themselves may have autism. Most autistic people looked to Autism Speaks before they knew the truth about it. So for me to believe that every person that supports Autism Speaks are bad people and they want to kill autistic people, that wouldn't be right, because I don't think it's true. I think probably 80% of people that support Autism Speaks simply just do not understand why it's bad, simply just do not have enough information about Autism Speaks to fully make an appropriate assessment of what it does for people with autism. It's the same thing with PETA or ASPC, the animal rights organizations that have caused more harm to animals than good. I believe PETA is an organization that promotes the killing of pit bulls. As someone who is not that wild over pit bulls, I think it's very hypocritical for you to say you're an animal rights organization and then turn around and say, well, pit bulls are just too dangerous to have as pets. Now, I don't know much about ASPC. That's the Sarah McLaughlin commercial where she's singing that song Angel, and it makes me all sad and it makes me want to adopt an animal. I didn't know that was bad, but other people were telling me, that's also bad. It's not any better than PETA, because I was looking at ASPC as like the alternative PETA, but apparently it's just as bad as PETA. But I think the issue is with a lot of us who are social justice or activists or people who want to do the right thing in our communities, we look to these organizations and think that we are helping them, when in reality, we are helping people who just want the money to themselves. Like, some of us have donated to Wyclef's Haiti fund, and Wyclef actually took all the proceeds for himself. Like, little to none of that went to Haiti. Or how we may support organizations in parts of Africa, East Africa and West Africa, and believe that they are helping women and children there. But a lot of times these are missionaries who intend to convert people into Christians. I had to look that up because we had a cultural festival a week or two ago here, and there's these purses and garbs that are made by women in Zambia. And like, the white women work there and say like the proceeds go to there, and I say, okay, that sounds like a good idea. But then I had to look into it because, like, as I said, like, a lot of people who are African, like continental Africans, told me and others that, be careful about those organizations because these are neo-colonial colonial organizations that intend to convert indigenous Africans into Christians. And it's good to help, but you also have to understand who you are helping, who you are sending your money to. So as I said, you're not a bad person if you currently support Autism Speaks, or you're in an organization at your campus that sponsors Autism Speaks. If that's the only way you can bring awareness to autism, fine. But I think what autistic people want you to do is to educate, to research. We don't want you to sit here and think that Autism Speaks is the only way to go about it. There are other organizations ran by all types of autistic people that are better than Autism Speaks. Actual autistic people that are on the panel that can speak from their experience and isn't monitored by neurotypicals and allistics with God complexes. Because people have brought up the fact that there are autistic people on the panel. I understand people have tried telling me that Autistic Speaks have gotten better, but I think it's just putting autistic people on the panel just so it doesn't get found out for the shitty organization that it really is. But from what I've seen, it's nonverbals. It's people who are made into faceless objects and commodities where they are portrayed as this silent group of people that can't really speak unless, it's, monitored by parents or allistics and neurotypicals that make it seem like being a neurotypical is a better way of life and it's teaching us how to be neurotypicals. Now, that's not for every person with nonverbalism or mutism, as I would call it. I have selective mutism. Like, I'm talking now regularly, but when I am in certain situations like therapy or when people are talking to me face to face, one-on-one, I get mute. Sometimes I talk. Sometimes I do not talk. So I am nonverbal at times as well, but I consider myself a verbal autistic because for the most part, I am able to express myself. I am able to talk to people. I am able to have conversations. I am also neurotypical passing, so I do see the privilege in that as well. I'm not one of those, we're all disabled, and whether you're visible or invisible, we aren't taken seriously, because it would be dishonest for me to say that I'm not taken seriously because I am looked at as neurotypical and I'm not visible. Like, I don't have visible signs of autism. Like, sometimes when I'm in airports or I'm in crowds, okay, then I get tics. I kind of look around, I kind of pause, I get anxiety, I get overwhelmed, I get disoriented. Sometimes I even get delirious because, it's a part of a lot of people's autism. So, let me shake this. But Autism Speaks doesn't really acknowledge those who are like me that are considered quote unquote high functioning, because I do not use functioning labels. I used to a long time ago until other autistic feminists told me that functioning labels are very problematic. They are ableist. They create binaries between disability and abilities where, well, you can do this so you function well, or you can't do this so you don't function well. You're low functioning. I used to tell people I am high functioning just so they could understand that, I'm not an autistic person that they know. I'm not a child. And that's one thing I don't understand is why people are comparing autistic adults to children, like, oh yeah, my 6-year-old has autism. It's like saying that a 6-year-old acts the same as a neurotypical adult. A neurotypical 6-year-old acts like a neurotypical adult. An autistic child is not the same as a 23-year-old autistic woman. They really are not the same. Now, I do have tics, I do have quirks, but I am able to handle them better than a child, okay? And I am able to understand a child more than a neurotypical who acts as if a nonverbal child is stupid or they are doomed because they cannot speak. I don't know how many times I've been in situations where people try to tell me, oh yeah, this child is worse off because he can't speak, or, she doesn't say much and it's just terrible. And I said, well, what can she do? Like, she has motor skills, like she puts the blocks together, she's able to communicate the best way that she can. She's a very smart child. She's aware of her surroundings. So let's not focus on what this girl or boy cannot do, but what they can do. Let's focus on that and work around that. Let's not focus too much on what they can't do and what they should do. Let's focus on what they are doing at the moment. I believe Sesame Street has an autistic female character named Julia who is verbal, but she has echolea. When she does talk, it's in a monotone, kind of repetitive fashion. How I used to talk when I was younger, like sometimes, how sometimes I repeat my words, I will say something and then I'll say it again for emphasis. I think that's part of it as well. So she's someone that kind of talks in like monotone, and she kind of repeats her words, or it's in fragments. People tell me all the time I speak in fragments, like going to the movies, okay, doing this. Like, that's how I talk a lot of times. I also have what you call idiosyncratic speech, where as a black girl growing up speaking that way, which in the autistic, oh, the fuck. I am back. And then this stupid thing wants to act up again. And I don't understand this phone. I don't think this movie wants me to afford it. I think maybe the neurotypical gods or some ableist god doesn't want me to tell the truth. As you can see, my patience wears thin. I don't have a very good patient. My patience run very thin. As people have noticed in my videos, certain things. Now I forgot what I was about to say. What was I about to say about autistic people and nonverbals, and how like a lot of times we aren't taken seriously and people don't really want to hear what I have to say as an autistic person because they think that I'm too functioning, like I don't speak for the general autistic experience. Let me tell you something. A lot of autistic people are high functioning. If anything, I think most autistic people are not high functioning, but they are considered high functioning. A lot of people who are autistic are able to convey themselves. Oh, speaking of conveyed, yeah, here's what I was about to talk about: idiosyncratic speech, and how as a black girl, speaking in a certain way when you're an autistic, it's considered peculiar language. Like, you may speak formally, you don't know how to like kind of relate to peers. You may speak like an adult if you're like 6 years old. And as an autistic black girl, that was perceived as proper, but I knew the truth. It was because like I had speech impediment. It was part of my autism, idiosyncratic speech, where people with autism, especially children, speak in a certain way, speak in a very organized way, because speech oftentimes is difficult for an autistic child, so they try to speak as normally as possible, and a lot of times they speak formal in one way because that's the only way they can connect to other people, or this is the only way that they can talk. But because oftentimes I speak formal or I write formally, people take that as proper or formal for a Black person, and they praise me because, oh my God, like you speak well. But someone told me, like, when an autistic white person speaks that way, then it's like, oh, it's definitely autism. But when an autistic Black person may speak a certain way, it's like proper language. Another thing, as an autistic girl, a lot of women aren't diagnosed very young because a lot of signs that are autistic for men are considered normal female behavior for female autistics, such as having certain interests and fixations on hobbies and activities like celebrities. Like, a lot of girls with autism get fixated on a particular celebrity. Like, oh my God, I love Beyonce. Like, Beyonce, Beyonce, Beyonce. And you know how autistic people like to talk about one thing and they get on one subject and it's just something that they into? Well, an autistic girl can be obsessed with makeup or things considered girly, or a TV show like, I don't know what's these TV shows you kids be watching these days. Sherlock, The Vampire Diaries, Pretty Little Liars. I don't know what these kids be watching these days because I don't watch a lot of TV, but they may get stuck on a fanship, or they may stand for someone, and it's a valid interest for an autistic person, but because she's a girl, it's considered just vapid female behavior. But I remember I had a friend in high school who was autistic as well, and one of the main things teachers told her was to not talk about celebrities. Like, that was one of the things that they did with her therapy. Don't talk about celebrities, because that was just something that she would always talk about. She was always talking about Paris Hilton, Kim Kardashian, Elizabeth Taylor, Marilyn Monroe, people like that. And like, that was part of her therapy, to try to stay away from celebrities and topics like that, because it was part of her stimming, and they wanted to stop her from that, which I don't understand. Stopping people from stimming, it does no good. It does absolutely harm if you try to break away someone's stimming habits. And with stimming habits, it is when you have a particular activity for a short period of time, and it's a form of self-therapy to you. Like, for instance, I can be sitting here listening to headphones and I would just be nodding my head, like, for like a for like maybe a short temporary period of time, and it's my way of recharging myself. That's how I look at stimming, like an autistic person recharging themselves, um finding an activity that can calm themselves down. Or you may see someone do this, like tapping their fingers on a surface. I find that particularly annoying, but I understand that's what autistic people do. A lot of autistic people do. Or they may shake their leg, or they may play with something for a while and only focus on what they are doing at that moment. Like, that's what stimming is, where you are totally zoned out and you are focused on one particular activity, and nothing can stop you until you break yourself from it. So a person can come up to you and talk to you, have a conversation with you, but you are stimming at the moment, so you don't acknowledge them or you don't pay attention. And it's not to be rude, but that's what stimming is, where you are on idle mode. Basically, you're concentrating on one particular thing, and your brain does not stop until you yourself decide when it's time to stop. This stupid ass phone. I don't understand why this fucking phone wants to act up today. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be calm as possible, but it just doesn't want to cooperate today. But I think stimming is good for people with autism because it helps them calm down. When you are in an environment that is too overstimulating, that's where stim comes from. You stim, like you try to stimulate yourself, or you try to calm down so you don't freak out, and people won't sit here and say, well, what's wrong with her? Why is she being weird? Oh my God, like, she's crazy. And then y'all get mad at autistic children when they do something like that. But I know at the school I went to, they gave us stress balls. They gave me stress balls. And I didn't really like those because they were so fucking hard. Like, I didn't understand fucking stress balls because they were too hard to squeeze. I like those little gel things that you get at the zoo. I don't think this phone likes the fact that I'm speaking truth, or something doesn't like it because it wants to. Oh, this must be one of those delusions by what do you call them? I think I'll always be thinking something weird is happening. I had those things where it was kind of like a jelly and long finger cuffs thing. Like it was shaped like a finger cuffs, and it was something you would get at the zoo where there'd be like a little animal inside of it, like a lizard, and there was like water inside of it. I liked holding those things because I liked the texture. You know, I would always be getting these hard stress balls, and they weren't pleasant. Like I said, I never understood the purpose of stress balls, but I understand that's what schools give out to people. Anyway, there's just so much layers to being autistic. It's not one thing. You can be an autistic person who is verbal, and you can be an autistic person who is nonverbal. You can be an autistic person who is totally good at math. You can be an autistic person who is not good at math. You can be someone who is dyslexic, has a learning disability, or you can be someone who is completely gifted. You know, disability is not a binary. Disability and ability is not a binary. But back to Autism Speaks. The main reason why you should not support Autism Speaks is because it is a eugenics organization, to put it in the best terms possible. And I know people don't feel comfortable with the word eugenics because of history, but I think it's appropriate because people were actually using things like how it's a disability and a disease to wipe out certain children, Jewish children, biracial children, African children in Germany, where let's test these children because they are neurodivergent. There is something wrong with their brains. That's why we call it eugenics, because it does relate to that. Where you're operating on small children and saying these children are doomed and these children need to be fixed. These children need to adapt into a neurotypical normal environment. And it's not to the equivalent of Nazi Germany. That's not what I'm saying, but it does have some relations to that. It's just packaged in a nicer terminology. It's packaged in a nicer movement and nicer phrasing. But to be honest, it's eugenics. You got people sitting here pro-choice because she could have a child that's autistic, or she could have a child that has Down syndrome. That's why you're pro-choice. Then I don't want you because I'm pro-choice. But it's people like that makes other pro-choicers look bad, because you're only pro-choice because you may have a child with a disability, not because you just don't want a child at all, but because you want a child. You just want a good child. You want the right type of child. And I just feel like you might as well be pro-life. You might as well be a hypocrite where you don't really care about life unless it's to your convenience. That's what it seems like to me. I'm not one of those people that feels like, a child inside your belly is a human or like a fetus. I don't feel that way. But I'm also not for people that use disabilities like autism, Down syndrome, developmental disabilities and disorders to justify why a woman should not be told what to do with her body. It's just terrible. Do not use us as scapegoats. Autism Speaks as well believes in vaccines not being used. They are anti-vaxxers. They believe that. See, once I'm about to speak on the anti-vaxxer, then you want to fall again. I'm so ugly. Autism Speaks, much like Donald Trump that supports it, is anti-vaxxer. They believe that because children are vaccinated at an early age so they won't get sick and die, they believe that's why we have autism. So we had movies like Vaxxed, where it promoted this dangerous idea that vaccination cause autism, and I believe that was something that they touched on in MD House, where stupid people do not want to get their child vaccinated because it gives autism. Apparently my mom didn't believe in that. I used to read things all the time that said you probably have autism because your mom never breastfed you. My mom never breastfed me. um it said maybe you didn't eat the right type of vegetables, things like that, and my mom would just straight up say that's bullshit. So just stupid stuff like that, just dangerous ideals to say, I don't believe children should get vaccinated so they won't get sick and die, because they could possibly get a neurological disorder that's different from the mainstream. Just dangerous stuff like that. It focuses more on the trauma of the parents than the child with the autism. Oh my God, this is the worst thing in my life, to have a child with autism, and I have to work extra hard to be a parent and to educate myself on, just what it's like to be autistic. Like, I have to work hard, and, what about my feelings? And my child will never be normal because, oh my God, like, he doesn't speak, and he's just like, oh my God. Like, it's people like that, and it's disgusting. I don't feel sorry for you, and I feel sorry for those children that have to be subjected to such bigoted, ableist parents like yourself. Like, I don't feel bad for you. You're sitting up here crying like your child has this deadly disease. And it's not just for children with autism. It's children who have Down syndrome. It's children who are developmentally disabled. And I understand if you're crying because they are going to live in a world where it's ableist, and they are going to be judged, and they're going to have a harder time making friends, getting jobs, being taken seriously, being treated like human beings. That's why you should be crying. You should not be crying because it's hard to be a parent. It's just hard to try and make them like myself and just be, a normal person. Like, that's what they are crying for. They aren't crying because, oh my God, my child has to suffer from all these ignorant people, and he's going to live a difficult life being himself. No, it's selfish reasons. People are selfish. And like I said, this is why Autism Speaks is just not a good organization. It's not an organization where it intends to help. It's just intended to make neurotypicals feel good about themselves. And there's more information on it, and I want to get more into detail, but this is all I can really say for now. Just take my word on it that I would not be supporting Autism Speaks.